which is kind of relevant somehow to our next guest, which is what we have the last... Oh, we're ready to go. I'll share with you tomorrow. All right. Stand with me on man's old planet, gazing north when sky has darkened. Follow down the dipper's handle, half again and veering leftward. Do you see it? Can you sense it? Nothing there but cold and darkness. Try again with both eyes covered. Try once more with inner vision. Hearken now to wild geese honking, bouncing off the strange equations. That's all I remember. And that book was famous for a word that Robert Heinlein coined. Do anybody know what that word is? Yes, grok, exactly. To grok something, to deeply understand something. And really, that is something that our next guest has obviously and certainly done. And I don't need to introduce him much. One of the beautiful things I've discovered about the artists I've been introducing this morning is the incredible humility, humor and simplicity of all of them. They don't need a big rap. They don't need a big rave. So without further ado, the amazing Mr. Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your light. Thank you for your love. I'm so honored to be here today and so privileged to be invited by two wonderful humanitarians that are changing the world, Bhavani and Bharat Mitra. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate with all the wonderful people. I met some of them just a couple of days ago, and I realized I've known them all my life. And I'm so honored to follow in the wakes of my friend Jimmy James Twyman, and then Kirk, who I just met, and I realized he's my brother with a different mother. And my dear friend Russell Walder, who brings the music of the heavens down for all of us. I so appreciate all of you. I'm here today with some good news and some bad news. Might as well start with the bad news. Civilization, as we know it, is about to end. And the good news, civilization, as we know it, is about to end. And I'm so honored to be here because they say, when I came here and I realized this is a community that, though I'm not a permanent member of, every time I show up, I feel I've been here forever. The Byron Shire, the Mullum Magic, it's all so wonderful because they say, well, you're in a bubble. And I go, don't worry about the bubble. It's getting bigger. It's getting bigger every day, and it will include everybody because you are the cultural creatives that have already set the foundation for a new evolution. You're already living it. And this is why the joy of my being here, because I've talked about it for years, but to actually be here and see it in action gives my heart so much joy and love because I know we're on the right track. Thank you for who you are and being here. Thank you. I'd like to start off with a concept of evolution. And when I talk about evolution, what you've all read in the history of your evolution is that over time, there were primitive organisms, and that over time, these primitive organisms evolved and got greater and greater and greater complexity. We went from bacteria to amoebas to worms to clams to fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. And they say, what's the next level of evolution? Well, this is an unfortunate scenario because it missed the understanding of evolution. This is just a lineage, but there's a pattern. And this is what's so cool because I want to tell you about the pattern. Because when you see the pattern, that's where you can see where the future is coming from. And the pattern starts off in a different way. It's not this at all. And I'll give you the understanding of the pattern. It starts with an organism. A new organism shows up on the planet. The next phase of that organism is it proliferates, and through that process, matures and mutates into the highest level of nervous system functioning it can do. Well, the issue that's interesting about that is once you have maximized your nervous system and your ability, what's the next level of evolution? And the answer is the individual cells start coming together and they start forming a colony. They start sharing information. If I have 1X information and we have 1,400 people here, that's 1,400X information for all of us to share. So the colonies start out as just all of them getting together and sharing awareness and learning how to live together. Then the colonies differentiate into an integrated community. And what's so interesting is that integrated community ultimately becomes a new organism itself. And that's cycle 1. And cycle 2 is just a repeat. The new organism proliferates and then starts to maximize its system of intelligence. And what does it do? Then it starts forming a colony, and then it starts getting an integrated community and starts all over again. It's an evolving spiral. And as we go each turn of the loop, we get a higher level of organization, a higher level of evolution. Well, the relevance about all that is we go from organism A to organism B to organism C, and every time we jump up. Well, let's relate it to a real understanding. We'll start with this. Organism A is a bacterium. The first life form on this planet, 3.5 billion years ago, it was formed. And then what it do for 1 billion years is proliferate. And every time it proliferated, it started to get more intelligent, but it maximized its intelligence. It was only so big, it only had so much membrane to offer to its nervous system, and it reached its maximum amount of intelligence. Then what did it do? The bacteria started to form colonies together and communicate with each other and share an awareness. And then what did they do? At some point, they form an integrated colony called a biofilm. And a biofilm is a whole colony of bacteria under one membrane, under one domain, under one roof. And they started sharing and working with each other and specializing their functions and integrating their activities. And then what was the result of that? And the answer is it created the next organism called an amoeba. The amoeba then was for the next 1 billion years. It's a community that is differentiated from bacteria, but it's its own organism. And then what did the amoeba do? It proliferated. And then there was 1 billion years of single-celled amoebas running all over the place, trying to get more and more intelligent, and they started to come together. And as they started to come together, the spiral continued. So let me just reveal the spiral in a three-dimensional understanding. So you see, it's an elevating spiral. I say the first twist of the spiral was the bacterium, the first organism on this planet. And I say, well, what was next? The next was the amoeba. But what is the amoeba? A community of bacteria living under one skin. And I say, yeah, but what happened to them? Well, they proliferated, and guess what? They created us. We are made out of 50 trillion amoebas who came together and said, we can create a community to work together in harmony and maximize the intelligence of the system. And the maximization of that intelligence is us. And I said, yeah, but what happened then? Well, we were that new organism. And we went out and we proliferated. And we got smarter and smarter, and we started to come together in colonies. And as we started to come together in colonies, we started to work together, integrate together. And where are we today? We're on the path to the next organism. The next organism is humanity. We are cells in the body of the new superorganism. And this is our mission, to let go of our individuality and recognize we're all cooperative, integrated communities coming together in the larger community of all. And humanity is going to express the fullest intelligence of 50 trillion amoebas that made us, and 7 billion to 10 billion human cells in the bigger body. And we're on the edge, the cusp of that. Because what we're beginning to recognize is we've been fighting each other for a long time. When cells fight each other in a body, it's called autoimmune disease, self-destruction. And we're on the edge of that self-destruction, but we're becoming aware. We're awakening. The awakening is so great here that you might say, well, we already know that, but the rest of the world is beginning to find out. What's the awakening? We are all cells in the same body. When you kill another cell, you're killing yourself. And the idea is we're moving up the scale. And where are we today? We're in the last turn before manifesting humanity. I said, well, what is the thing that we need for our evolution? Well, a lot of people think evolution is, okay, we change our bodies and we become more evolved. I have to look back and laugh because I remember 50 years ago when they were talking about the computers are coming. And I was going, what's going to happen to human civilization? Oh, we're going to be big heads and little tiny bodies. And it's like, boy, did they screw that one up. You know, now we got totally big bodies and little tiny heads. It didn't work that way. The evolution that's in front of us right now is the evolution that is going to change all of that, but it's not a biological, physical evolution. It's an evolution of consciousness. We're not having to change our biology. We already evolved. What we have to change is our minds. We have to change our minds because we don't know who we are. And what I would like to offer is the insight, a step toward creating that humanity, because I want you to know who you are. You're not that individual human. You're a piece of God expressing itself in your own body. Every one of you is a direct connection to the higher knowing of life and love. Every one of you is a spiritual entity in this body, which I want to show you from a scientific level. Why do I want to show it to you on a scientific level? Well, so many people have heard it, all new agey stuff, all that sweet stuff. Oh yeah, we're a piece of spirit, we're a piece of God. But we live in a world today that looks for truth in science. And when science can offer us a truth, that takes us an opportunity to take that giant leap. So I want to really introduce you to who you are. And to start with that, I have to go back to say how we were misprogrammed to find out that we don't know who we really are. Where did that start? Well, it started with old Charlie Darwin. Charlie Darwin said, oh yeah, we got here through accidents and mutations, and we're here in a struggle for survival, a competition for fitness. And we took that scientific belief and we made it a cultural reality. Every day, everybody goes out there to fight each other, what? To be the fittest, so they can survive. But in being the fittest to survive, then what are you doing with the people that are so-called less fit? And all of a sudden you realize we're destroying them, and yet they are ourselves. Where did this story really become scientific and mechanical? And the answer was in 1953. In 1953, we were downloaded with the image of DNA. And I remember that day in May when that article came out in Nature. I was a young kid, and I went out on the porch to get our daily newspaper, which was one of those papers with always a big picture on the front page and some headline above it. And I remember this one day, I went out there, picked up the morning paper, opened it up, and to my surprise, there was no picture on the front page at all. It was just big, giant block letters that said, "Secret of Life Discovered." And all of a sudden, we all were introduced to the nature of the DNA double helix, the nature of genes, the nature of the fact that we are influenced and we are controlled, and our traits come from these genes. And of the two people that brought us this, James Watson and Francis Crick, 5 years later, in 1958, Francis Crick extends an awareness through a hypothesis. And the hypothesis is called the central dogma. And I'm not making this up. This is actually the name of the hypothesis, the central dogma. And what does it represent? Well, I have it like the Ten Commandments for the reason it is. This is the foundational Ten Commandments of modern science and biology. And what does it say? It says, how did we get here? Who are we? And what does it start with? It starts with the DNA, the genes. And then the genes are translated into something called RNA, which is like a Xerox copy of the gene. And that Xerox copy of the gene, the RNA, is used to make the proteins of your body. And why is that relevant? Because the proteins give you your physical structure. You're a protein machine. The character and quality of your protein machine is apparently programmed in the DNA. And the information only goes in one direction. It comes from the DNA down. Why is that relevant? Because it says your traits were pre-programmed even before you were born. You were given the DNA, you were given the genes, and now the rest of your life is to unfold a genetic program. And the relevance about all that is recognize you are the protein. And I say, but what's so significant about this hypothesis? I said, you are the protein. What's the point? According to hypothesis, can you go back and change your DNA and genes? And the answer is no. Information only comes from the top down. I said, wow, what's the significance of that? And I realized we don't control our lives. We're controlled by these molecules of DNA. And I was teaching that kind of stuff. And you know what was so interesting about it? Number one, this was never scientifically demonstrated. It was a hypothesis. But it sounded so right, and the scientists just loved to take a shortcut. And they said, hey, how many of you scientists believe in this? And all of them raised their hands. They said, okay, it's a fact. And it's put in the textbook. And it was put in the books in 58, and then 68, and 78, and 88. And you're still reading it today. Why is this important? We have forgotten this was never a scientific reality. This was a suggestion. And yet we bought it as truth. Nobody questions it. We've repeated it so long, we don't even remember where we got the idea from. And we bought this idea. So what's the relevance of this idea? Genes control your life. And this is what I learned, and this is what I was teaching in medical school. And I was teaching medical students all this. But the biggest surprise and the biggest joke of my whole life was when I started to get some awareness, and one day I left the university and I walked out. I had tenure, and I said, I can't teach here anymore because I know it's wrong. And in going out and trying to defend my new ideas, one of the first things I looked up was the concept of what the heck is dogma? I was teaching that all that time. I was teaching central dogma. What is dogma? I look it up in the dictionary. It was my greatest surprise of my life. Dogma means a belief based on religious persuasion and not scientific fact. I was teaching religion in medical school. I said, but what's the consequence of all that? And I say, it's on the front cover of this Life magazine. Were you born that way? And I say, well, why is that relevant? Well, the DNA gave you your traits, right? That's what it says in all the books. I get my traits from here. And then I say, wait a minute. As far as we know, did we pick our genes when we got here? Then all of a sudden I said, well, wait, what if I don't like my traits? Can I change my genes? And I realized, no, I can't change my genes. And I didn't pick my genes as far as I know. And the genes control me. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, what does that make us? What does that make us? Victims. We're victims of heredity. You got cancer running in your family, diabetes running in your family, Alzheimer's running in your family. And you say, oh my God, I'm a recipient of the genes from this family. This is in my fate. What can I do about it? Go back to the central dogma. Nothing you can do about it. But when you find yourself a victim, a couple of things happen. Number one, you start to recognize that if I can't do anything about it, then why should I even care? And all of a sudden, we start to become irresponsible about our lives because we say, well, look, I got these genes. I can't do anything about it. I might as well just do the best I can and have a good life and just go along with this storyline. And the worst part of it comes this way. If I find that I'm a victim, then what do I need? And the answer is a rescuer. I need someone to help me because I can't do it myself. So I say, who's that? Welcome, the pharmaceutical industry. And we bought them and we pay them to fix us from something that we believe we have no control over. And the fact is, do genes really control our lives? Well, in the textbook, the genes are recognized to be in a structure called the nucleus. The nucleus is the largest so-called organelle, which means miniature organ, inside the cell. So the nucleus has all the genes. But then we look at the nucleus and we talk about it. It's in the textbooks. The nucleus is the brain of the cell. Well, why should the nucleus be the brain of the cell? And the answer is obvious. It's where the DNA is and all the decisions come from. So the nucleus is the brain of the cell, and we buy that. It controls the function of the cell. It's written in all the textbooks. And then I say something like this. I say, wait a minute. If you have a living organism and you remove the brain from that organism, what is the consequence? And the answer... the answer is the organism dies. You take the brain out and throw it away, the organism should die. I say, okay, cool, I'm working on cells. And we say the nucleus is the brain of the cell. So I say, well, what happens if you take the nucleus and throw it away? This is a process called enucleation. I was doing this 40 years ago. Take a pipette, a micropipette under the microscope and go inside a cell and suck out that nucleus and throw it away. And you think, oh my God, you killed the cell. And it's like, no, I didn't. the cells stay alive. They stay alive for 2 or more months. And what? With no genes. They have a very complex lifestyle. They control themselves. They live in a community. They communicate with each other. They work with each other. They have a great life with no genes in it. And why is that relevant? Because how could I be teaching genes control life when organisms have a wonderfully controlled life with no genes in them at all? So the whole concept that the nucleus is the brain of the cell is completely false. And this leads to a fundamental fact of life, and I want to give you this fact of life because you've got to know this. Because after years of hearing that genes control things for you, and you are the victim of these genes, let me tell you something. What is a gene? It is a blueprint to make a protein. It's exactly what it is. It's a blueprint. I go, well, what's the relevance of that? I say, look, go to an architect's office. She's working on her blueprints. And you lean over her shoulder and you go, excuse me, is your blueprint on or off? And she would look at you like, on or off? There's no on and off to a blueprint. And I go, precisely. Because all of us have talked about genes turning on and genes turning off and genes controlling something. Guess what? They have absolutely no control. They can't control themselves. They have no idea in the world what's going on, just as much as a paper blueprint doesn't have any idea what's going on in the world for itself. And yet we've given the power. We said genes control me. Genes turn on. Genes turn off. That is an outright fabrication. It is completely untrue. And why is that important? Stop being the victim of genes, because all they are blueprints. And the relevance is then we have to understand a new understanding about life. And I was fortunate enough in 1967 to be working on stem cells. That was 40 years ago. And what was relevant? There was only a handful of us in the entire world that even knew what a stem cell was 40 years ago. What is a stem cell? Let's just simplify it. It's an embryonic cell. But I can't call it an embryonic cell for this reason. The moment before you're born, I look at the cell and I say, that's an embryonic cell. A minute after you're born, I look at the same cell and I go, oh, that's a stem cell. It's the same thing. You're all filled with embryonic cells. You say, but why would I have them? And the answer is very simple. Every day you lose hundreds of billions of your cells. They die from old age. They die from trauma. They die from being used. And you have to replace them. You have to every day replace hundreds of billions of your cells. Where do you think you get them from? Stem cells. Stem cells are embryonic cells that are in your body, and they're there to repair you and take care of you. And I said, well, what was my experiment? Well, it was so simple, and the results were so profound, it irritated all my colleagues. But I have to tell you about it. What I do is put one stem cell in a petri dish by itself, and it would divide every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's one cell, then there's 2, then there's 4, 8, 16, 32, and after a week I have 50,000 cells in the petri dish, but guess what? They're all genetically identical because they came from the same parent cell. I have 50,000 genetically identical cells. That's not the experiment. This is the experiment. Cells are like fish. They live in a fluid. And I have to make the aquarium fluid when I take cells out of the body and put it in a plastic petri dish. And we call that fluid culture medium. And our best effort is to try to match the fluid inside the body that the cells are normally growing in so that they could find a happy environment. So here's what I do. I take my 50,000 cells, I split them into 3 different petri dishes. So I have 3 dishes with genetically identical cells in it. But here's what I do. I change the environment, the culture medium. I just change some of the composition of that culture medium a little bit. And guess what happens? In dish A, in environment A, the cells form muscle. I go, that's great, that's fun. I say, yeah, but in dish B, with a different environment, the cells form bone. I go, wait. In dish C, with yet a different environment, the cells form fat cells. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't even have to be a cell biologist to answer this of the most profound question of all. What controls the fate of the cells? It's the environment. And this is so profound for a very simple reason. I take my dish of healthy cells, and I take it from a healthy environment and I move it into a bad environment. What do you think happens? The cells get sick. They start to die. If I had a physician who studied cells and could actually do a home visit and came to look at my cells at home and look at my dish, and they go, "Oh, Bruce, your cells look kind of sick in that dish. I wonder what kind of medicine I should give them." And I say, "No, don't give them any medicine. You want to make the cells well? No medicine. Take the dish from the bad environment, move it to the good environment, and they instantly get well." The cells are a complement to the environment. And so the concept is this: if you're sick, it's a symptom to let you know you're not living in harmony in the world in which you're in. So all of a sudden it says there's a better way to heal ourselves, not that old-fashioned way. I would say, well, how does it work? How does the environment control the genetics? So a long time ago, I was making a study of the cells, and I say, well, what am I doing? I'm adding signals, chemistry, let's say, into the Petri dish. The signals rain down upon the cells. Some of the signals attach to the cell membrane, the skin of the cell. I say, then what happens? The signal from the skin is sent inside the cell, and that signal is used to control the proteins which create behavior. That signal is used to control the chromosomes where heredity is. So I can activate behavior with environmental signals, or I can go in and activate the genes. Well, I was studying this 1975, 1980. Now there's new science. The new science is not focusing on the genes, it's focusing on the signal. The new science is actually called signal transduction. And what does that mean? It just means, how do you translate a signal into biology? Where and how is this occurring? And part of signal transduction is, how do the signals from the environment go in and affect the genetics? Well, it's a subdivision of signal transduction. It's called epigenetics. Epigenetics is the most profound, revolutionary science on this planet for a very simple reason. The old science was called genetic control. What does that mean? Control by genes. I go, well, that's really cool. I say, what about epigenetic control? Sounds like the same thing. It's like, it's so different. It's amazing. Why? Epi means above. When I say, what's the word for skin? It's called epidermis. Why? Because just underneath the skin is a layer called the dermis. So epidermis means the layer above the dermis, the skin. So now I say, what does epigenetic control mean? And the answer is simple. Control above the genes. And all of a sudden we started to realize, wait a minute, the genes are not in control. No, they never were in control. That was our belief system. It's epigenetic control. I said, well, how does the signal from the environment actually do this? I said, well, we go look at the skin of the cell, because that's where the information is being processed. The skin of the cell membrane, is an information processor. And the significance about this, just so we can take a big jump, is while you see yourself as this unique individual with all your human functions, respiration, digestion, excretion, muscle contraction, endocrine system, reproductive system, nervous system, immune system, guess what? Virtually every cell in your body has every one of those functions. Why? Where the heck do you think you got your functions from? You're made out of 50 trillion cells. When you look in the mirror and see yourself as a single individual, that's a total misperception. You're not an individual. You are a community. You're a community of 50 trillion miniature human beings called cells. Wonderful community. Guess what? Every cell has a job. Every cell gets paid. Every cell has health care. Every cell gets protection. And guess what? No cell left behind. And the relevance of all this is that you are a community. And I say, well, what's significant? I say, your mind. Your mind is a government. Your mind is a government that determines the fate of the cells in your community. When you have a healthy, happy mind, you have a healthy, happy population. But if you have a tyrannical government that's in there saying, yeah, you guys can't do anything, who do you think you are? What do you think happens to the citizens in that community? They start feeling very bad about the whole situation. They stop working in harmony, and illness is the consequence. Illness is a breakdown in the harmony of the community, which is ultimately reflected to the government that is informing that community. So we have this understanding. I say, how does it work? Well, the cell membrane is the skin of the cell, is the brain of the cell. And I just said to you a little while ago, cells are miniature people. I go, yeah, they are. And I said, they're just like you. And then you're going to say, you mean my brain come from my skin? I go, absolutely. If you understand embryology, when an embryo is formed, there are 3 layers. They're called ectoderm, outer layer, mesoderm, middle layer, and endoderm. And each layer gives rise to specific organs and tissues. Guess what? The outer layer, called the ectoderm, only gives rise to 2 things in the human: skin and nervous system. Your nervous system is coming from the skin for a very simple reason. The skin is the interface between the outside and the inside. What better place to read about the 2 environments? So we understand. And I say, well, how does this membrane work? I say, there are switches, like light switches, built into the membrane. And the significance of these switches, as you can see in this picture of a cartoon of the surface of the cell, they're called receptors on the skin of the cell. Do you have receptors? Think about it. Do you have any receptors? Come on. Eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch, pain, pressure, temperature. Where do you think your receptors are found? In your skin. You and the cells are exactly the same in this regard. So the receptor has a sugar antenna, which is reading the environment, just like television antennas, reading signals and what's going on, and a protein that takes that signal and carries it inside the cell. I said, well, what does it look like, this receptor switch? Well, this is a little piece of the membrane I cut out. And I show you here is a switch, a light switch. It has 2 parts to it. The receptor, which has the antenna reading the environment, and the effector, which is a protein that takes that signal and sends it inside the cell to control it. The receptor is stimulus. The effector is response. Stimulus, response. The cell's response is due to the stimuli. Where do the stimuli come from? The environment. I say, well, how does it work? Well, basically, it's a very simple understanding. The switch with the receptor is scanning around. There's a connector protein. Look at the shape of the connector protein and look at the shape of the blue receptor. They don't match, so I can't connect the switch. But when a signal from the environment shows up, it changes the shape of the receptor, and that connects it to the effector, and the effector sends a signal inside the cell. When the signal goes away, the switch is broken. So now nothing's happening until a new signal shows up, connects the stimulus to the response, and that response goes inside the cell and controls the behavior. This is a typical switch. This is what the switch looks like, the receptor on the left and the effector on the right. And I'm going, okay, good. You come in a biological class, and I'll try and numb your mind by giving you a scientific explanation of defining the switch. And I say, the switch is a receptor, effector, integral membrane protein complex. And you go, I say, yeah, that's really difficult to try to understand. It has no meaning to you at all. But if I translate the meaning of the receptor and the meaning of the effector, then I can give you another story. I say, what's the function of the receptor? What's the function of your eyes, ears, those that taste it? What's the function of that? Function, I just want to say, I should have added that. This is not, I show you one switch. There are 100,000 receptors on the surface, so a cell is responding to 100,000 pieces of information coming in every second. I say, function of the receptor, awareness of the environment. Yeah, eyes, ears, nose, let me know what's going on in the environment. I say, yeah, but what's the function of the effector? Oh, that's the one that sends the physical signal inside the cell to control the function. So if I define the switch in a different way, I would say a switch represents awareness of the environment through a physical sensation. You go, well, that's better than integral membrane protein complex, blah, blah, blah. I said, but I can shorten it even better. Because there's a word, a single word in the dictionary that defines that switch. I said, what's that word? Perception. Perception. Awareness of the elements of the environment through physical sensation. And all of a sudden I say, what is the name of the switch that controls your biology? Perception. Why is that relevant? Because you have perception. And you can change your perception. And as you change your perception, you change the function of the switches. You control your biology by the way you see the world. And it goes through perception. And it's so wonderful because not all your perceptions are accurate. Yet your perceptions still control your biology. Whether they're accurate or they're false, they still control your biology. So a simple way of saying, what's the name of the switch? It's belief. What do you believe? Because whatever your belief is, it's going to activate that switch. You have a positive belief, you're going to get a much different activation than if you have a negative belief, because you're going to engage different switches in the system. The most important understanding about this is changing your perception of life. This is a wonderful article recently from Dean Ornish, a physician in San Francisco. He was working with prostate cancer patients. We all think, oh my God, cancer is genetic, cancer is genetic. First of all, absolutely not true. 10% at most of cancer is hereditarily linked. 90% of cancer is due to environmental responses. Why is that relevant? You respond to the environment inappropriately, you create a cancer. You change your response to the environment, you eliminate a cancer. But what I want to show you is this. Dean Ornish takes a group of prostate cancer patients. He splits them into two groups. He says, one, you do the conventional medical treatment, all the pharmaceutical garbage, you do that. He said, the other group, no drugs, no medicine. Here's what I'm going to do. Just to ask you to change your diet. I'm going to ask you to learn stress reduction technique, and I'm going to teach you how to meditate. In 90 days, 500 genes change their function just by changing diet and understanding how to reduce stress. Because stress is the biggest cause of illness on this planet. It's been actually estimated that up to 90% of doctor visits are due to stress. And the relevance is, you can change your genes every day just by the way you're responding to the world. You are not a victim of the genes. You are the master of your genes. Your mind controls the genes. I go, well, great. I got this Petri dish. I got cells in it. And you say to me, Bruce, this is a real nice study. You did that in a plastic Petri dish, and it's so nice in a laboratory, but I'm a human. What the heck is the connection here? And I already told you what the connection was. I told you, guess what? While you see yourself as a single individual human, you are not a single individual human. You're a community of 50 trillion cells. And the significance about that 50 trillion cell community is this. You are a skin-covered Petri dish. And you've got 50 trillion cells inside. And I say, yeah, but what are those cells going to do? And I say, well, the fate of the cell is controlled by the culture medium. I say, oh. What's the culture medium inside your body? I go, oh, the culture medium inside your body? What is it called? It's called blood. The blood is the culture medium inside your skin-covered Petri dish. Think of this and recognize this important fact. To a cell, it doesn't make a difference if it's in a plastic dish or a skin dish. The cell responds to the composition of the culture medium. Then I say, yeah, but my blood is the culture medium. I say, yeah, it's got a composition in it. What's it controlled by? Number one, nutrition. Thank God people around here are beginning to understand to get away from that mass-produced, industrial, pesticide-filled, polluted food and start eating all the organic food. Because this is what's feeding your cells. But more importantly, in addition to the nutrition, there are signals. Signals in there to tell cells what to do. Yeah, but where do these cellular signals come from? These signals that tell the cell to become this or become that, to be healthy or to be sick, where do the signals come from? And the answer is this. You read the environment. You read the world environment out here. You read the inside environment inside your body. I said, who reads the environment? Oh, I go, the nervous system perceives the environment. I perceive it's kind of warm and muggy in here, and it's affecting my sweat glands right now. And the fact is, if it was cold, I would change the response of my physiology. It's different when you go outside when it's warm. When you go outside, it's cold. Why does your physiology change? It read the perception of the environment. I go, yeah, but is it just the perception? I go, nah, that's where the catch is. Because I said sometimes our perceptions are right and sometimes our perceptions are wrong. So all of a sudden it's not that the brain is directly controlling the chemistry of your body. It's your mind. It's your mind. You can change your mind and change your biology. Yes, this is what spontaneous remissions are all about. People who are terminally ill and everybody counts them out and all of a sudden they become healthy. How did they do that? They change their mind. And when you change your mind, what is the result? The mind tells the brain what chemistry it should release. That chemistry goes into the culture medium, the blood, or that chemistry can be carried to the nervous system, to the cells, and those signals are the signals that control behavior and genetics. And all of a sudden it says, well, then you're not a victim of the genes at all. You're actually creating the culture environment that programs your cells. Significance, you're not a victim, you're a master. You're the one that can change your perception. You can change your mind. You can change the way you look at the world. And all of a sudden you start to get out of the fact that I'm a victim of forces outside of me. No, you're not. You're in charge. I go, really cool. I go, yeah, but where or how does it work? And I go, well, my friend Bob Mueller, who does the covers of my books, created this wonderful cartoon. Me as a cell biologist, but then I said, no, this is for you. You may not be a cell biologist, but we're all self-biologists. We create our own biology. And I say, well, how does it work? So look how simple this is. I say, you close your eyes, and when you open them up, there's someone you love in front of you. Your mind perceives love. And when you perceive love, you release chemistry into the blood, dopamine, oxytocin, vasopressin, growth hormone. They come out of the brain. They go into the culture medium. I said, what's the significance of that? I said, if I took those chemicals and put them into a plastic petri dish with cells, the cells will grow exuberantly well. And I said, no kidding. Isn't that funny how when you fall in love, you feel so good and you're so healthy? That's because you create a culture environment that nourishes and feeds cells. Love feeds cells. But I say in contrast, you open up your eyes and you see something that scares you. You don't release this chemistry. In fear, you release totally different kinds of chemistry. You release stress hormones and inflammatory agents. If I put those chemicals in the plastic petri dish, guess what happens? It stops the cells from growing. That's why fear causes stress, which causes illness. Why? When you're in stress, the chemistry is shutting down the growth of the body. You say, why would it do that? It's intelligent. It says this, if you're in stress and you're afraid, something's going to get you. So what does your body do? It says, listen, we may have to run like hell in a second. So I'll tell you what, conserve all the energy so if that lion is chasing us, we can get out of here. Well, how do you conserve energy? You shut off everything that's not necessary at the time of stress. Well, the significance about that is this system was designed a million years ago. A million years ago, what was our stress? That saber-toothed tiger. When that saber-toothed tiger chased us, damn well better be in stress, get that energy running, and get away from the lion. But guess what? When you get away from that saber-toothed tiger, no more stress. And all of a sudden, you go back into growth. And the significance is you cannot grow when you're in stress because the chemistry released into your blood shuts down the cells. And this is where the problem comes in today's world. They are feeding you fear. They're feeding you stress. And the consequence of that is you get sick. And you get sick, and then you feed the corporate medical people. You start to live in fear. And this is what we got to get rid of. So I say, so where does our mind come up with all this stuff? Well, let me just tell you a simple point. Here's a simple fact. The function of the mind, think about it, how simple this is. The function of the mind is, excuse me, go back, Mr. Mind. Go back one. Is to create coherence between what you believe and the reality. If you live in fear, then you will generate chemistry that will manifest fear for you. If you live in joy and love, well, then you change your life and you live in joy and love. But the joy, love, fear, whatever it is still based on your perception and your belief. So the whole idea of the brain is to interpret the world and then send the chemistry inside the body to have your cells support you in the world in which you live. So the cells don't know what. My liver cell right now is buried in here trying to digest something I just ate, and it says, what's going on in the world? The liver cell says, I have no idea what's going on in the world out there. But I'll get some information because the nervous system will tell me what's going on in the world. So my nervous system's function is to read the environment, interpret it, and then tell my cells, what must they do? If I misread the environment, I misinterpret the environment, then I send the wrong information to my cells. And we've been programmed to totally misperceive the environment. We've been so programmed we don't even know who we are. And the whole idea is, so where'd you get this programming from? Well, the programming comes from the mind. And I say, well, there's two parts to the mind. And they work together, but they're not the same. And this is very critical because we've generally put the two together and said one mind. I go, no, no, you have two minds. A conscious mind, which is associated with what is called the prefrontal cortex, a lobe of neural tissue right behind your forehead. That's the latest evolution of the brain. Before that evolution, the rest of the brain would constitute the subconscious. So we have a conscious part up in the front, and the big part of the brain is the subconscious. I say, guess what? They have two totally different functions and way of operating. And this is the critical piece you need to know about your life. And it goes like this. The conscious mind is the seat of your uniqueness. The conscious mind is you. The conscious mind is connected to your source. The conscious mind is the seat of your spirit and your body. Your personal identity is in that conscious mind. Conscious mind is a fabulous mind. You know why? It's creative. It's the creative mind. I ask you, what do you want out of your life? And you can give me a creative answer. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be successful. I go, great. That's a great creation. Where's that thought coming from? Conscious mind. Connected to who you are and what you really want. And I go, well, so what is the function of the conscious mind? Well, it has your wishes, your desires, and your aspirations. What do you want out of life? Your conscious mind's going to feed you and tell you what you want. Because that's you. This is what I want. And it's also the seat of, and don't use it in a negative way, positive thinking. Because positive thinking is creative thinking. I go, well, this is cool. This is the function of the conscious mind. She said, so what is the subconscious mind? A totally different animal. The subconscious mind is the equivalent of a record playback mechanism. It records your life experiences, and once recorded, you can push the button and play them back over and over and over again. So what is the subconscious mind? It's the habitual mind. It's where habits are. You can be pushing the button all your life and play the same thing over and over and over again. A lot of people say the subconscious mind is the font of hell, you know. That's where all the evil comes from. It's like, no. It's a simple machine that records. What you record could be good, and what you record can be bad. Don't blame it on the subconscious mind. Because without that, you wouldn't have the ability to remember things like how to walk. If you didn't have a subconscious mind, you wanted to go home, I would have said you should have started about 2 days ago if you wanted to get home, because you wouldn't know how to stand up even. So the subconscious mind is a powerful ally because it gives us an opportunity, once we learn something, not to have to learn it every day over and over again. So what does it represent? It has your instincts and your life experiences. Yes, it records your life experiences in there, so when you push that button, it will play back what you learned. And more importantly, and this is very critical, it doesn't have just your life experiences, it has other people's life experiences. Why? It acquires programs through indirect learning, meaning I don't have to understand something directly. I go to school, the teacher tells me about it, and now I learned about it. Even though I've never experienced it directly, I learned it in school. So I have indirect learning. So the subconscious mind doesn't have just your life experiences, it has what people have taught you. So all of a sudden we say, yeah, the subconscious mind's got all these programs in it. And the significance about this is we have these two wonderful minds that cooperate together. How do they cooperate? And listen to this, because this is the key to your life. The conscious mind is not time-bound. What does that mean? Hey, what are you doing next week? You got a vision of what you're doing next week? Oh, then your mind is thinking into next week. I said, wait, what'd you do last week? Oh, if you can tell me what you did last week, then your mind went back last week. I said, wait. I want you to think of this fact in your head. And what will your conscious mind do? Stop looking at the world and go up in your head and start thinking. That is the most important point for this. The conscious mind not being time-bound means that it travels. Every time you have a thought, it's not paying attention. And how many thoughts do we have a day? How many thousands and thousands of thoughts do you have a day? Why is that relevant? If your conscious mind's not paying attention, then who's running the show? And the answer is the default, the subconscious program. I go, well, what's interesting about that? Well, the subconscious program lives only in the present moment. The subconscious doesn't know what happened last year as opposed to what's going to happen next week. If I could talk to your subconscious mind and say, when did you learn how to walk? And your subconscious mind go, today? Because it doesn't know any other thing than today. So the subconscious mind is always living in the present moment. Well, yeah, but here's the problem. This is the problem. The subconscious mind represents programming. Programming from your life experiences, yes, but more importantly, programming from other people. Your subconscious mind was programmed by other people in the early part of your life. And it works like this. You want to train an elephant in India. What do you do with that? How does that mean? It's a monster. It could be 12 feet tall. How do you tame, so-called, an elephant? Well, for the first few months of its life, you tie a big rope around its leg, you tie that rope to a big stake, and every day for the first few months of its life, what does it do? It wakes up every day and tries to get away, yank its leg, kick the thing, roll on its back, do everything to do what? Get away from the damn rope. After 3 months, gives up. It says, that rope's on, I can't move. I'm done. And I said, yeah, but that's a little baby elephant a couple feet tall. What happens to the elephant? It's 12 feet tall. How do you keep it tied up? If you tie a rope to an elephant to your house, he'll pull your house down. How do you tie up an elephant? The joke? You just put the rope on its leg. You don't even tie it to a stake. Once the rope is on its leg, the habit kicks in and says, oh, rope on leg, cannot move. There's a monster standing there with a rope that's not even tied to anything, and it's totally disempowered. The relevance? We are all like that elephant. We've been programmed in the early part of our lives to have ropes around our legs to tie us down, and we believe we are limited because we have these ropes. I said, where do the ropes come from? I said, well, look at the development of the brain. Now, here's an important part. When you put wires on a person's head and you read what is called EEG, you're reading brain function and brain activity, okay? And I go, really cool. And as an adult, you have a whole range of different vibrational levels. From the lowest level, delta, which is sleeping. The next higher level of vibration is called theta, which is when you're waking up in the morning and you're half awake and half asleep. Twilight reverie, it's called. And then you start to ramp up the vibration a little higher as you're waking up, and you get into the next level called alpha, which is calm consciousness. And by the time you put the key in the ignition and you're driving off to work, you ramp up to the next higher level called beta, which is focused consciousness. Adults have the whole range of activity, but guess what? Kids don't. Kids start off at the lowest level, and then over time ramp up to a higher level, and then to a higher level. The first year or so of a child's life, it's in delta, the lowest vibration. Partially because it spends most of its time sleeping, but also because a child at this age has a nervous system that can take information in, but doesn't have a nervous system that can coordinate a response out. So infants can hear and understand everything you're talking about, but guess what? They have no motor coordination to express themselves, to respond to you, and that's why they're so frustrated. That's why they cry a lot. They were thinking, if I could just tell you what I'm thinking. But they can't. But the next important part is from first year up, especially through about age 7, a child's brain is predominantly in theta. Theta is associated with imagination. Yeah, sure. That's why kids between 2 and 7 can mix the imaginary world and the real world together because they're operating at that vibrational level of imagination. But it's something more important. But I'll come back to that in a second. By the time the child reaches 7 and starts getting older, it ramps up to the next level, alpha, consciousness. It is now expressing calm consciousness. And then around 12 years of age, it ramps up to the next higher level, beta, which is schoolroom focus consciousness. This is why education changes before 12 and after 12. A child before 12 cannot do that focus consciousness that a child after 12 can do. And I said, yeah, but okay, now what's interesting about this? If you haven't seen it, I really want you to look at it real carefully. Why? Consciousness is alpha. Oh, yeah? Then when did consciousness begin? After 6. Then what happened before 6? It's called the programmable state for a very simple reason. Very simple reason. Theta is hypnosis. For the first 6 years of your life, everything you observe is directly downloaded into the subconscious as programs. It doesn't go through consciousness. It's not filtered by belief. It's strictly recorded exactly as seen. This is not an accident. Nature didn't do this to punish you. Nature did this to help you. Why? Well, it can only give you so much information through genetics. The rest of it you have to learn. Yeah, but how can you learn if your conscious mind's thinking, you're a kid, and you're a parent trying to tell the kid, here's 1,000 rules you need to learn today about being a part of society. The kid, after first rule, says, why? Why? And all of a sudden you realize you're never going to get to rule 2. So nature eliminates the problem. Nature says, good. You don't have to have the child worry about it. Everything you say is going to be downloaded, and it becomes a program. So a child observes its mother, its father, its family, its community, its culture, and observes them. The observations go straight down into the subconscious and become behavioral programs. And all of a sudden you start saying, oh my God, this is where we get enculturated. How do I live in a culture? How do I know how to speak to a policeman separate than a kid? Because I saw my father talk to a policeman totally different than when he talked to a kid. And I started to see how my father's behaviors were. And the consequence was I downloaded my father's behavior. And all of a sudden I have these in my subconscious mind. And here's the critical part that I really want parents to understand. There's a tendency for parents to try to goad their children like a coach. They say, you can get out there and work harder. Come on, go out there. You can strive. You can work harder. How do we say that to a kid? Well, we say, oh, that's not good enough. I say, who do you think you are? You don't deserve that. You're not that smart. Now, I'm not meaning to do that to punish my child. I'm thinking if I say those things, maybe my child will make a better effort. So we're out there like coaches, as parents, telling our kids things. And they say, I said, well, what does that mean? I said, but the child doesn't have consciousness. It's just recording what you just said. And all of a sudden you realize, this is where we get our self-identity. Who am I? It's not controlled by who I believe I am. I'm controlled by what other people tell me who I am. You're a good kid. You're a bad kid. You're not that smart. And all of a sudden you start to realize the number of negative things that parents say without realizing that the child's just recording everything they say. I say, why is that important? Because once that program's in the subconscious, it's always there. And all of a sudden you start to say, oh my goodness, what did I program my child with? Self-love? Self-esteem? Absolutely not. The largest portion of all of us in this world lack self-love. Why? Because we were criticized. And when you're criticized as a child and that's recorded, then you become critical of yourself. And if you're critical of yourself, how can you love yourself? All of a sudden we lost who we are. We lost our love. We become programmed by these beliefs. You know, well, that's cool. That's in the subconscious mind. I go, well, here's the problem. This is the problem. The secret mind, how your unconscious shapes your reality. Why? As it says, according to cognitive neuroscientists, we are conscious of only about 5% of our cognitive activity, meaning only 5% of the time are you controlling your life with your conscious mind. I say, yeah, but why is that relevant? The conscious mind has your wishes and desires in it. 5% of the day, you're moving toward what you want. What happens the other 95% of the day? Your mind's thinking. It's not paying attention. When it's not paying attention, you default in the subconscious. Like, yeah, but when I get in the subconscious, what am I playing? Other people's behaviors. People's behaviors that have sabotaged me all the way up to this time. And I don't see it. And I tell audiences, let me give you an insight to this because you're all familiar with it at some level. I'm going to suggest that you had a friend, a close friend as you were growing up somewhere, and you knew your friend's behavior really, really, really well. You knew your friend, and you happen to know your friend's parent. And one day it dawns on you, your friend has some of the same behavior as their parent. So you casually volunteer. You go, hey, you know, Bill, you're just like your dad. Back away from Bill. Bill's going to go ballistic, like, how can you compare me to my dad? You're all familiar with it, and why there's two profound points, same story, two profound points. Number one, everyone else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who doesn't see it is Bill. Profound point number two, we are all Bill. Every one of us, 95% of the day, We are playing other people's programs. But why don't we notice it? And the answer is simple. Why are you using the subconscious program? Because your conscious mind's not paying attention. So when you're playing your subconscious programs, you don't see it. And this is where the problem comes from. We all have the greatest wishes and desires to make our lives into something, not realizing you're only operating 5% of the time with those desires. If you were programmed as one of those kids that threw a tantrum in the store, you wanted a toy and your dad wanted you to get out of the store and you were crying, your dad said, "Shut up, you don't deserve that." And you recorded that. Then I can say, well, what happens? You're 40 or 50 years old now. And I say, the moment your mind's not paying attention, what programs are going to play? The subconscious program. What program is that? I do not deserve. What's the function of the mind? To take the program and turn it into reality. So if I have a program I do not deserve, what do you think the invisible behavior is going to do? It's going to shoot me in the foot every minute to make sure I do not deserve. Now, it's really interesting because science has come upon this in really recent times. But it was interesting because the Jesuits, they knew this for 500 years. They would boast about knowing this. They would say something like, biblically speaking, they say, "Give me a child and I will show you the man." Or more realistically, they would say, "Give me a child until it's 6 or 7 and it will belong to the church for the rest of its life." What did they know? They knew that if I can get the first 6 or 7 years of programming, I own your life. You know why? Because your conscious part's only going to work 5%, and the program I put in is going to work 95% of the time. This information hasn't gotten lost by the leadership of our world today, because we've all been programmed to be what? Disempowered. Who the heck are we? What are we? And the reality is, we have been programmed with negative programming. That programming works when you don't see it. But let me give you the crux of the problem. You go out in the morning, think, I'm going out to make success of my life. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to find romance. I'm going to have a great job. And at 5 o'clock, you come home with your tail between your leg going, oh, what a hell of a world out there. I couldn't get there. Couldn't get there today. And I say, why? Well, it wasn't in my fate. The universe is against me. I go, that is the problem. Because if you don't see it's your own subconscious behavior that's sabotaging you, then we take on the role of victim. I'm a victim of forces outside of me, when it turns out this is absolutely false. You are the most powerful people in the world, and you are the elephant with a rope on your leg. I don't care how powerful that elephant is, it's not going to move with that subconscious programming. So, simple point. Conscious mind, your wish, your desire, what you want. Subconscious mind, your habit. New science, you operate 5% from the conscious mind, 95% from the program. Why is that relevant? How much of your life is coming from your wishes and desires? Virtually nothing. And all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I got to get out of this loop. And you might say, well, how do I get out of this? How do I know what my subconscious programming is all about? Because a lot of it was programmed even actually in the last trimester of pregnancy and the first 6 years of my life. I don't remember what my parents were saying to me when I was just born, when I was 1 year old, when I was 2 years old. I recorded it, but I don't know what they said. So I'm going to give you a simple, wonderful understanding. You don't have to go backwards to find out where your program is. You don't have to go back and kill the messengers and beat up on those people that did bad on you. Forget them. They're the messengers. You walked away with a message. What's the message? 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious, so your life is a printout of your subconscious programming. What works for you that you like works for you because you have programs to support that. But anything that you do when you go out in the world and you struggle and you work hard and you say, I'm struggling to get there. So why are you struggling? The answer is simple. You have self-sabotaging, limiting, and disempowering beliefs that will not encourage that in your subconscious mind. So all of a sudden it says, do I need to go to a psychoanalysis for this? I say, absolutely not. You're living it. Just look at your life and see what's going on. What works for you works because it's supported by your belief. And what you have to work hard on and what you struggle for is your struggle is because it's not that program that's not supporting you. That's what it's all about. So, you all remember the story called The Matrix, right? I say, where do you find that movie? I say, oh, you go into story. You look under science fiction. And I say, The Matrix is not science fiction. The Matrix is a documentary. We are here to take the red pill. What's the red pill? To get you out of the programming. I'm going to give you an insight. It's a book that I have coming out this spring. And it's a really wonderful issue. And it says, what would your life, just think about this for a second. What would your life be like if you were not a prisoner of your subconscious programming? Okay, I'm going to give you the answer. Have you ever fallen in love? Come on, anybody ever fallen head over heels in love, yes or no? I mean, it could have lasted a day, a week, a month. I'm going to ask you 3 questions about that time in your life when you fell in love. Number 1, were you healthy? Almost everybody was exuberantly healthy when they're living that love. I say, did you have energy? Come on, I know you made love for days without stopping for food or sleep. And the most important question is this: when you fell in love, was life so beautiful you couldn't wait for the next day to have more, yes or no? Well, guess what? Was that like heaven on earth? Well, there's a scientific understanding now of how that happened. And the understanding is this: it's one of the few times in your entire life where you operate almost fully 90 to 100% from your conscious mind, and you don't default to the subconscious. Why? Well, if you're in love, why would you let your mind wander? Everything you wanted was right there. It's stupid to let your mind go when everything you were looking for is in your face. So what's the point? The one time in your life where you don't operate from the program, what did you do? You created heaven on earth. What's the limitation of us from having heaven on earth? The program. That's all it is. And that's why, unfortunately, the honeymoon ends for people. Because no matter how much you're in love, life gets busy. And when life gets busy, the subconscious starts kicking in. And guess what? The behavior in that subconscious isn't you. And that partner you've been with for that honeymoon period where you have all this juicy love going on, and all of a sudden you slip into the subconscious and you play your dad's behavior, and your partner looks at you and goes, "Who are you?" Well, that's the end of the honeymoon period for a bit, for a simple reason. You yourself didn't even know what you just did because you don't see your subconscious. So you look at your partner and go, "What are you talking about? I've always been this way," which is true. And then the honeymoon ends because of the compromise. What are the compromises? Behaviors that you downloaded from other people that do not represent who you are, but then enter into the relationship because you're not paying attention. The whole reality is you can have heaven on earth by taking the red pill and get out of this programming. But now I'm going to take you one step further for this. I never believed in spirituality. That's why I ended up being in a medical school teaching genes, proteins, medical science, physiology, body machine. That's it. We're born as a mechanism. We die. We were lucky. We were here. Then we're gone. I never believed in spirituality. When I started to learn the lessons from the cell, and I damn well learned all the important things I needed to know about life from the cells they told me, the one thing I learned at the moment, I recognized that the membrane of the cell has those perception units on it, was this. As I sat there, after understanding the nature of this membrane and switches and all that stuff, it dawned on me, there are no 2 people that are biologically the same. I can assure you of that for a very simple reason. Take your cells out of your body, put it into another person's body, what do you think is going to happen? Their immune system is going to say, "Not self," and reject the cells. And you take somebody else's cells, put it in your body, your immune system will say, "Not self," and reject the cells. What's the point? Cells have a self. They can be recognized to be your cells or somebody else's cells. I said, where is the self? So I take 2 identical cells. I just picked liver cells. I could pick 2 brain cells, 2 nerve cells, 2 skin cells, 2 muscle cells. I wanted 2 identical cells for this reason, because 2 liver cells are basically liver in function. So almost all of the cytoplasm is all being exactly the same function, taking care of liver. Okay? But here's what's different about it. One of them is Bruce's cells, and the other is Margaret's cell. I have two different liver cells, because if I take Margaret's cell and put it in my body, Bruce's cells will say, not self. Margaret's cell's not self. Get rid of it. Take it out of the system. And vice versa. I put my cells into Margaret. Her system says not self and gets rid of it. So I say, where is the self? So that's why I picked two identical cells, because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove the color from the slide of everything that is the same, with the intention of leaving where two cells differ from each other in regard to identity. I know the nuclei aren't the same, but let's ignore the nuclei. Let's say we did enucleation, so we don't have the nuclei in there. I say, where do two people differ from each other? And push the button. Lo and behold, where's the color? It's in the outer surface. And I say, what is that thing in the outer surface? I say, those are the receptors. Those are the antennas. I say, what do you mean antennas, receptors? What are they? I say, in medicine, we refer to a large number of these as self-receptors. Receivers of self. I go, wow, that's really interesting. Well, what does medical science do with these things? I said, if I want to transplant an organ from person A into person B, I really want to make sure I can get as many of the self-receptors to match. That's what they do with tissue matching or organ matching, to make sure that they give a recipient an organ that is closest to their identity. Well, that's nice, and that's what they do with the mechanical stuff. I had a whole different thing. Blew my mind. What blew my mind was this. Well, we see the antennas, we say that's the difference between self. I say, no, you fail to see the point. They're antennas. They receive a signal. Where do you think the signal is coming from that they're reading? Just quick note, they're on the outside of the cell. They're reading an environmental signal that you receive on your receptors that the person sitting next to you does not receive, because they have a different set of receptors. Each one of us has different receptors. I can do a simple experiment. I can take my cell and I can remove my receptors of identity. It's still a liver cell, but it no longer is a Bruce's liver cell. It's generic. You know why? I can take that cell and implant it into any one of you. You would never reject it because you recognize a liver cell. But you don't recognize, it's not Bruce's anymore. I took off the receptors. Or I could do this. I could go to Margaret's cell, take her receptors off, transfer them to my cell, and guess what? It's Margaret's cell now. And even though it was my cell, if I put it back in my body, my system would say, not self. It belongs to somebody else. I transfer ownership by transferring the antennas. You still haven't got it, because I'm going to try and tell you what it's all about in this picture. There's a show. I say, we turn on the TV, and I say, there's an image on TV. I say, where the heck did that image come from? You say, oh, came from the television. I say, no, did that image come from the television? No. Oh, it was from the antenna. I say, well, it's picked up by the antenna, but the show is not from the antenna. Where's the show come from? Oh, the signal that is received by the antenna. So the show that's on the television isn't in the television. The show is received from the environmental broadcast, the signal. And I go, very interesting point. I go like this. We're watching the TV. The picture tube breaks. I say, hey, the television's dead. We all go, yeah, television's dead. It's not responding. It's not doing anything. It's dead. And then I ask this big question. The television died. Did the broadcast die? The answer is no. Broadcast's still there. You say, how do you know? I say, you get another TV, you plug it in, you turn it on, and tune it to the station, and voila, you're back online again. Guess what? I'm in a television. I'm playing right now The Bruce Show. If my television breaks, I'm still here. And how would you know? Well, ultimately, as the Dalai Lama can tell you, you're going to find another television. Because in the future, an embryo is going to come up with the same set of antennas that you have right now, and you're back online. But guess what? Totally different television set. Could be male, could be female, could be white, could be black. That's the television. That's not the show. The show is the broadcast. And all of a sudden I started to realize, oh my God, I just saw something that blew my mind. And what was that? I'm not in here. I am a broadcast. I play through this television set. Well, there was a moment of realization because I wasn't spiritual 40-some years of my life. Looked at the mechanism. 1 minute later said, oh my God, I'm spiritual. I missed the whole devotional part. But then I had a very interesting moment of life because I want to tell you, I had a profound response from my own cells. Because at that moment when I recognized I exist as a spirit and I exist as a body, and all of a sudden my questioning mind said, why have a spirit and a body? Why not just be a spirit? And the answers welled up from my cells. And that was the first time I knew I had Jewish cells. I asked a question and the answer came back in the form of a question. I said, why have a spirit and a body? And the cells said to me, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? Think about that. Think about that. What's the relevance? If you're just a spirit, what does a sunset look like? If you're just a spirit, what does being in love feel like? There are no answers to that for a simple reason. All those sensations are derived from the cells of your body that take the information of this world, convert it into your nervous system, and send it off as a broadcast back to your spirit. You come in to this body to have experience. You come into this body to taste and touch and feel and smell and love life. That's why you have this body. So your spirit knows what it's all about. Without a body, the spirit might have a thought, but it will have no experience. And all of a sudden I realized the greatest cosmic joke that ever came upon me was the concept that people say, when you die, you go to heaven. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, when you're born into heaven. You were born into a garden. You were given the most beautiful garden in the universe, the envy of any other life forms in this universe. And we were given an opportunity to come here and do two things: to experience the senses and take them home with us to our spirit. But we also came here to create. And that's what we're here, to create heaven on earth. You've done it when you fell in love, but why leave it for that short period of time? Why not have it every day of your life for the rest of your life? And how do you do that? Get rid of the programming that has put that rope around your leg. Because you have touched heaven. And so to summarize how it would work, I use something that's really recent and in our minds right now. It's called the Mariner, the Mars rover. I say, what is that? And I say, that is the equivalent of a human being. You say, well, it doesn't look like a human. It looks like a go-kart or something like that. And I go, it's a human. Why? Because I can't go to Mars. You can't go to Mars. But I want to know what Mars is all about. So how do I handle that? The answer is this. I send up this device. Guess what? It's got eyes. It's got ears. It's got ears to listen what's going on. It's got taste receptors to taste the soil, see what's all about. It's got temperature receptors, feel what's the temperature like. It's got all the ways of reading the environment that we read the environment so that we can experience it indirectly. I say, how does it work? I say, well, there's a guy at NASA, and he sends a signal up that's picked up by an antenna. And that signal goes in and drives the machine all over the place. I go, yeah, but what else does it do? Well, as the machine's driving all over the place, it's reading the environment, and what's the machine doing? Sending the signal back to the guy at NASA. I could feel like what it's like to be in Mars, and I'm not there. I'm here. But then also, let's look at it this way. We are Earth rovers. We come in with a signal that's picked up from our antennas. We are driven around by the signals of our source. And in our responses, we send the information back to source. That's why we're here. We're here to have this wonderful experience. It's the greatest gift the universe can offer. If you were just a spirit and you didn't have this body, you would be so longing for this trip. It's an honor to be on this planet. And this is why we should recognize it for what it is. And I want to say this. Grandma Aggie, Grandma, thank you. The indigenous people on this planet, thank God they're here. For this reason, we have lost how to speak to this planet. We have lost what it's like to be in the garden, how to maintain a garden. And it's the indigenous people of this planet, the Aboriginals here, the Native Americans in the U.S., the Indians in South America. These are the people that are still on this planet that have been talking to this earth and this God and this spirit and trying to leave us with a message of, what are you doing? This was so splendid. It was the Garden of Eden, and it's still the Garden of Eden. Why? Just as a terminal cancer patient that everybody counts is dead can have a change of belief and have a spontaneous remission, we are poised on a planet that many people have already written off as it's finished. And guess what? All we have to do is change our belief. When we change our belief, the planet will have a spontaneous evolution and a spontaneous remission. The garden will come back when we are ready to see that garden. And so I want to thank the indigenous people, because we should sit at their feet and learn everything we can how to talk to Mother Earth. And I say, well, what would be the consequence of that? I know there's some old geezers out here that remember Pink Floyd. This is called a prism, and it reflects something called refraction. You put white light in on one side, and the spectrum of light is expressed on the other side. I bring this up for a very important reason. People talk about the white light coming back to the planet. They talk about it in terms of some single individual, Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, the white light. Completely wrong, folks, for this reason. Think about this. The white light is broken up into the spectrum. The spectrum is a different frequency for each of the different wavelengths. Guess what? Each one of us receives our own unique frequency. And when you put all our frequencies together, we have the rainbow spectrum. And the relevance about that is simple. If I take that rainbow spectrum from the right and feed it back into the prism, it comes out white light on the other side. One point. If I say there's one person I don't like, just one person, I say take that person and throw them out. I take that frequency, I throw it out of the spectrum. I take the remaining frequencies, run it through the prism. Do I get white light out the other side, yes or no? Well, that is the message. Every one of us is a piece of the white light. Every one of us is a piece of God. You throw one person out, we're not going to see white light on this planet, because we are the white light. Don't look for other people to come and do it. We are the ones. We are coming together. This is the evolution, to bring us all together, to bring that white light back to the planet. And what happens when we bring that back? When humanity evolves, it completes the earth as a cell. The earth is a living cell. We are the protein receptors, the perception units of the membrane of the earth. When we download the signals from above and then create the responses on the planet, we are creating Mother Earth. But it's a matter of choice. And that's what this whole evolution comes down to. It's a matter of choice. I want to play a video segment from a friend of mine, Sean Galloway. It's called I Choose Love. And if we can have that wonderful volume that we love so well, let me start just because this is all it comes down to. What do you want to choose? Thank you, darling.
I can see tears. I see a choice, love or fear. What do you choose?
Thank you, my darling.
I can see peace, or I can see war. I can see sunshine, or I can see a storm. What do you choose? No, I choose to love with freedom flying from my heart where the light keeps shining. And I choose to feel the whole world crying for the strength that we can rise above. I choose love. I choose I can see sharing, or I can see greed. I can see caring, or poverty. So what do you choose? I can see gardens, or I can see bones. I can see life or death coming on strong. So what do you choose? No, I choose to love with freedom flying from my heart where the light keeps shining. And I choose to feel the whole world crying for the strength that we can rise above. I choose love. I choose love. I see us healing, darkness dying. I see us dawning as one world united. So what do you choose? Love or fear? Oh, we choose. I choose to love with freedom flying from my heart where the light keeps shining. And I choose to be
Thank you. Thank every one of you. I choose you. You are loved. I choose my dear Grandma Aggie. She is the teacher of love. I so honor Grandma Aggie. I so honor you, my evolution, my white light, my love. Thank you all very much. Thank you, darling.
Dr. Bruce Lipton. Wow.
Thank you, buddy.
Love feeds cells. Good equation, that. It's time to take the red pill. It's time for lunch. Just a couple of things to mention. There's food on both sides. Remember that. There's food over here. There's also food court, a village cafe over here. And during lunch, starting about now, Jeremy Roski, who's been involved and created the Voice of Youth for youth empowerment through creative expression, is playing in the Heart Village Cafe stage over on the right-hand side from me, through the entrance and to the right. So please go and enjoy that as well. There's food both sides. After lunch, a wonderful afternoon after such a wonderful morning, and beginning with Grandmother Agnes and Grandmother Pauline, who are down here before. And it's been a great pleasure to be your MC this morning on this stage and be taken over this afternoon by my dear friend Amir Pace, who'll be here for you. So enjoy lunch and be back here at 2:30. Bless you. Oh, yes. And also, during lunch there is a mandala being created. Actually, that piece of paper has disappeared. Could you... Come on, here. Come on. You come up here. Come on. No, you come up. Quick. There's a mandala for peace, for love, for beauty, Indian mandala. I think it's called Rangoli. Is that the correct word? At lunchtime over this side too. So please take part in that, if you will. Thank you. Next to there is our portal in the field over here. The doorways are sacred and meaningful as each of us makes it. Let's empower it with our imaginations and beautify it with whatever we bring to it. So you can take some things over there and add to the portal, I guess. You can use it for your own personal journey, symbolically stepping into the new world of your dreaming, leaving behind any of the old that you still carry. Begin with confidence and commitment, a new life that honors your truth. Co-creating with the one we all are, the theme here today. So enjoy lunch. Thank you.